Hey there, I'm Steve, and welcome to Jamsin Entertainment, and welcome to the conversation. Just before we get started, there are many ways you can help. You can like and subscribe so you never miss a conversation, but most importantly, please share this video. Get the word out there. There's a community of geeks, nerds, and dorks where we can talk about all the things that we love. Happy Passover and Happy Easter. Today on Throwback Thursday, we're looking at The Ten Commandments, starring Charlton Heston and Yul Brynner, directed by the great Cecil B. DeMille. This is actually DeMille's second time directing The Ten Commandments, the first time back in the early 20s, and it was quite different. I actually watched the special features on this. Strangely enough, it's not on my Blu-ray copy. The only special features on there are the commentary, a premiere trailer, and then a trailer. But this special feature I found on YouTube, and I'll link it below. Really, really fascinating stuff. And what I learned from, just before we get into the movie, what I learned from the special feature is that, other than that this is second time making it, the first time it was silent, and it went back and forth between like the story of Moses and the modern time. I don't know how that plays out exactly. Maybe I can find a copy out there somewhere and watch it. I don't know. Maybe it's out there. I do know that a lot of the scenes, especially the part in the Red Sea, they're like, he didn't reuse it from the first time he did it. He recreated it, and that is fascinating, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. Now on to The Ten Commandments. This movie is a technological marvel. There were a number of new effects coming out, and Cecil B. DeMille wanted to use every single one of them in this movie, and he absolutely does. This movie is gorgeous from beginning to end, and the beginning is really like just the opening with the Paramount Mountain, but they do something very different. They light it as if it's Mount Sinai. Really, really cool how they just immerse you from the beginning. Actually, let me back up just a little bit. The very beginning, Cecil B. DeMille comes out and introduces the film, and what's again fascinating about this is not only that it's a technological marvel, but he informs you and any audience watching this that it's not just the Bible that they took from, because the Bible tells most of Moses' story, not all of it. So they actually look to ancient historians Philo and Josephus. Philo actually lived during the time of Jesus, and so he was able to write about that time period and the time period before. Both Philo and Josephus had access to documents that unfortunately we don't have access to anymore. They were either lost or destroyed. But it's just fascinating that DeMille took it to the next level on so many levels. He set out not to tell just the regular Bible story, but he also wanted to include the rest of history in there. And it's just fascinating from beginning to end. I'm probably going to be saying that quite a lot, because that's just the best way to sum up this movie, other than epic. There are epics and then there are epics. And grant you, this is probably the only, I don't know, I guess you could count Seven Samurai as an epic, because epics, I don't know, epic can mean different things. It doesn't have to be big and grandiose all the time. Seven Samurai could be an epic. I was about to say that, like, I've never seen an older epic before, but this is an older epic. And I've never seen one other than this on such a grandiose scale. And I would love, if it's possible, love to see this on the big screen. DeMille is also known for other epics. He also did Jamsin, which I would also love to see. But like 99.99%, okay, maybe I won't go that far. Maybe, okay, 99% of what you see in this film is in front of the camera. Even the burning bush is in front of the camera. The only times it's not in front of the camera is when Moses puts his staff down and becomes a snake, and the two priests of the Egyptian gods put down their staffs and they become snakes. That's animated. And then the fire that's laid over top of the stone in the balcony in the hail scene, one of the plagues, that's animated in. And then the finger of God and the pillar of God, those are also animated in. But everything else is done in front of the camera and just compiled in. For instance, the parting of the Red Sea. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to watch the special features. I wanted to know how he did it. There's this enormous tank in Hollywood. So what they did was, there's this huge tank, and there's water on either side, and all they did was fill it in and then play it in reverse. But they also, to demonstrate the water flowing up while they're traversing through, that is taking pictures of the water flowing down on either side of this huge tank, and they just split it on either side so it looks like it's flowing up. In reality, it's flowing down, and they compile that all together. And these aren't just enormous, beautiful sets. They actually shot on location in Egypt. They actually traversed the same tracks that Moses and the Israelites tracked in Exodus. They actually make it to Mount Sinai and film on Mount Sinai. This movie is just beautiful. It's fantastic. It's fascinating. It's just epic in every proportion. And there is so much depth to this movie. There's depth of field. Like, there is so much in the wide frames that he takes. So much in that shot. You have like the actual location, then you have like the blue screen, and then beyond that is probably either a painting or it's a miniature. And parts where I thought were miniatures, like the huge city, it's actually just a facade set. And if you're not familiar with what a facade set is, and I'm not sure if that's the technical term, it's just the term that comes to mind for me to explain that it's only the front or maybe some depth of a building, because behind that building was actually, like, they had medical there, they had food there, they had housing, and they had animals on here. Like, today, I mean, I think it was like, watching a special feature, I think it was like $13.5 million to make this back then, which was probably a few billion dollars in today's money, or maybe even more than that. And like the first week out, it grossed $64 million. But today, okay, with the exception of The Prince of Egypt, which is strictly animated, if they were to do another live action of it today, and I did not see the 2015, 2016, there was like a movie called Exodus or something like that. I heard it was pretty bad. I have no interest in it. Long story short on that one. But today, all the scenes that you see in camera, for the most part, would probably be all CGI in these big CGI buildings. Well, no, maybe today, The Mandalorian uses some pretty impressive technology. Maybe they do it like that, but it would probably be, I don't know. It could be made today. I don't know how it would turn out, but it's just absolutely amazing the lengths and depths that this entire crew went to make this movie. And the other depths that are in this movie are the depths of character, issues, and concepts. This movie is just so beautifully made. Like the depths of character. Moses, you would think he would be pretty simplistic, but no, he is very complex, because he's shipped off on the River Nile, and he's found by Bithia, and he grows up a prince. And yet he has such compassion for the people he lords over. He doesn't necessarily rule over them, because you still have Seti, who's the pharaoh before Moses gets exiled and everything. He has compassion for life. I mean, he saves an old beggar woman from being entombed in this giant statue. And I'm trying to remember the one line. He says it after he saves the old woman, who's greasing up the stone to be placed together. And he says, blood does not make good bricks. The writing in this is also really, 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 really good. It's just amazing that he's been grown up being told he's better than those lowly slaves down there, and he could become pharaoh someday. Yet he still is grounded, he's still humble, and he just has a love for life. And despite the fact that he's a prince of Egypt, he's just a decent human being. And Ramses, in retrospect, after watching the movie and then watching the special features, there is more depth to him than I thought there was. I really thought he was kind of like one note. He's just an arrogant pharaoh, and that's really it. Like, he's just a stoic, arrogant pharaoh. But no, there is more to it. And I think that's the reason why I thought that about Yul Brynner's acting, and the acting in this in general, I truly believe, or at least started out thinking, that the reason why the acting seems odd, and it's just because I've watched, I don't know, more modern films, and then I have older films, it seems like stage acting on a movie set. And these sets are big and grandiose, where I could see how they would think that they're like performing stage. But I also watched, because I was wrestling with this idea of like, with this acting just seems, I don't want to say it doesn't seem good, but it's different. Even though I've watched this movie a few times growing up, so I watched another YouTube video about like the evolution of acting. And that's where I got the idea, is like, this acting style maybe is because this is a time frame where Hollywood is going from like an older style of acting to where the method was introduced. And the method is basically becoming the character. But when I watched the special features, a lot of the actors were especially Charlton Heston. Cecil B. DeMille approached him and said, "I'd like you to be in the Ten Commandments." And before he knew he was going to be Moses, he was reading the scriptures, he was reading up on history just to do his best in this movie. From my basic understanding of method acting, that's one way to approach method acting. I finally come to a conclusion that the reason why they're appearing to act as if they're on a stage, where it's like big grandioso gestures and enunciation, like really enunciating so you can be heard to the back of the theater, so to speak, is because this is an epic. And I think they're putting their heart and soul into this. And that's why the acting, in my opinion, is the way it is, where it seems like it's theatrical instead of in front of a camera. Another fun fact, Baby Moses is played by Baby Heston. So Mrs. Heston was pregnant during the production. She's not in the film, and his name is Fraser Heston. He was born shortly towards the end of the production. And Cecil B. DeMille was like, if you have a son, he's going to be Baby Moses. And he became Baby Moses. Now for the depth of issues and concepts, the different topics they cover in this movie. I first thought they're being really heavy-handed with slavery is bad. We all know slavery is bad. Even back in the 50s, they knew slavery was bad. But thinking about it, like shortly after watching the movie, and thinking about it right now, I don't think they're being heavy-handed with slavery is bad. I think they're simply telling you this story, and it's the Hebrews' lives in the beginning of the movie. That's when they were really it seems like they're really hitting you over the head with it. But it's the Hebrews' lives. They know nothing else. So it's not heavy-handedness, it's just their lives, and they're showing their suffering. But other things that they kind of explore is, what is power? And they show many different forms of power. Like there's power of the Pharaoh, like specifically Seti. He had more power than Ramses did as Pharaoh. Simply because he said something needs to be done, something got done. I mean, there are some exceptions, but I don't really want to go into the story, because you probably already know the story. And if you don't know the story, I highly recommend you go and see this movie. Fascinating. Doesn't matter if you're religious or if you're not. This movie is amazing. You'll love it no matter what. Another show of power is Ramses' arrogance. He thinks he's powerful simply because he is Pharaoh. But there's another character named Dathan, played by Edward G. Robinson, who has power over Ramses simply because he has information. And Dathan is a Hebrew who betrays his own people. Right off the bat, you don't like this guy. He's sleazy and disgusting. But because he has information and can get information, he holds it over Pharaoh. So you see that Pharaoh has less power than his father did. And then you see the power of Moses, how he's just a young wise man who does the right thing, gets exiled for it, and in his exile finds God. And then he really becomes the man he's supposed to be, because before that he was the Prince of Egypt, and he was in no position to lead anyone anywhere. So he had to go through, well, he was a slave first after being the Prince of Egypt. Then he was exiled because he killed an Egyptian. And within his exile, through his wandering through the desert until he meets up with Jethro and his soon-to-be wife, Sephora, he finds God. and then he speaks to God shortly after he gets married to Sephora. Throughout the entirety of that, he just becomes wiser and wiser, and you see his power and his strength of how he just stands up to Pharaoh, who's in ancient times the world would be whatever they ruled. So to the people in this area of Egypt, Pharaoh is the most powerful man in the world. Moses has such strength to stand up to Pharaoh. He just keeps on coming back at him and says, "Let my people go." And he would not have been able to do that as Prince Moses. And then, obviously, the power of God. And, wow, this movie, I can't say that it actually captures it because you can't quantify that. But it's a great visualization of what we might imagine it to be. And it's just, movie's beautiful. Movie's fascinating. It is epic. I can't do anything but sing the praise of this movie. The only problem I have is that it's restored. The fact that it's restored I have it on Blu-ray. There is a 4K version out there. And I don't know, maybe the 4K version is restored again. So the complaint I'm coming up with may be fixed in now. I don't know. But because it's restored, you see all the flaws. You see all the effects. Okay, not the flaws per se. You don't really see the flaws, but you see the seams of the effects. And it is a little jarring. It takes you out just a little bit. Seeing the seams is just breaks immersion, and that's my one criticism, is that in high definition, you see the seams of the effects. But seeing the seams, you can gain appreciation for how far they can go with the depth of field that they went with. Because you see like 3, 4, sometimes even 5 different effects in one shot, and it's just masterful. And my favorite shot in the entire movie is the overture of the second act. So after the intermission, and this movie needs it, it's 3 hours and 39 minutes long, says Cecil B. DeMille in the beginning of the movie. He says, "This will take 3 hours and 39 minutes to view. There will be an intermission." So the opening shot to the second act is the pyramids of Giza. There's like a set in front of it, so it's kind of obscured. I think it would have been more beautiful just to see the pyramids of Giza. But nonetheless, breathtaking shot to see for a few minutes while they play the overture music for the next act. Another fun fact, since I keep on mentioning Cecil B. DeMille, he does all the narration through it, which is really, really cool. I can't believe I didn't pick up on that initially. I only learned that through watching the special features. This movie's just a masterpiece. Those are my thoughts on the Ten Commandments. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you prefer it Blu-ray or 4K? Do you see the seams like I see the seams? And does it bother you like it bothers me? Maybe it doesn't bother you. Maybe you're sucked in it the entire time. It's just, I don't know. I pick up on those little things. Let me know in the comments below. Just a little house cleaning before we wrap things up. I was thinking of ways to make up more content, and one of the ways that kept on coming back to me, either watching YouTube or just talking to my friends, I'm going to start making clips of all my podcasts. So it's broken down. It's a little more bite-sized. If you don't think you can sit down for an hour to 2 hours to watch the entire podcast, you can catch segments. And so I'm just going to, new playlist coming this Sunday, and it will always be released on Sunday, podcast clips. If you like what you saw, like it. If you think other people like it, share it. If you really liked it, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and live your imagination.